One of the most common questions or statements, I guess I should say, that I hear from people who've experienced abuse is, why didn't I see this? Why didn't I see that this person was abusive? Why didn't I pay attention? Like, how could I have missed that, right? Some sort of variation of that. And let's talk about one of the reasons why you may have missed the signs. It's not that you may have necessarily missed the signs. It may be more of the circumstances didn't present themselves. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I've spent many, many years as a mental health therapist working with victims and perpetrators of abuse. And one of the things, that I've learned over my years and, working with all different types of people, different personalities, and in working in corrections is that, you know, there's varying degrees and varying durations of how long the mask can stay up on certain people, right? And sometimes all that needs to happen is that a circumstance needs to change for a mask to fully slip, right? And I think for abuse victims, most people who grow up being abused psychologically, emotionally, verbally, physically, sexually, all of those things, if you've experienced abuse, you've been told some level of, oh, you want to give the person a benefit of the doubt, you want to communicate, or just give it some time, or try to work it out, or maybe sort of explain things to this person, right? And so unfortunately, I think those kinds of statements lead to a victim or survivor sort of gaslighting themselves, right? And giving a person more chances than not. But even if doing that, even if your discernment is top tier and this person is very skilled at upholding the mask, again, I go back to certain circumstances may need to occur in order for the mask to fully slip and that person to do a complete 180 before you're looking at them like, I don't know who the hell you are. And so I'll give you an example. I'll use myself as an example. So, I used to have a colleague that we were good friends back when and I put the air quotes because I thought we were good friends. We did our internship together. We did our pre-doc internship, and then we went to our postdoc internship together, which I do not recommend to any future mental health people out there. I do not recommend that you do things with friends. So if I had to do all over again, I would definitely not do that. I still wanted to do the type of work that I did pre and postdoc. So that wouldn't have changed, but I would have been a lot more thoughtful about the locations and where I would go. Probably would have chosen somewhere else to do it. So not the type of work, but the location for sure. And anyhow, I think the other reason why I don't recommend doing something with a colleague or with a peer or with a friend for the sake of the friendship is because when you become a clinician, you want to, at least for me, I wanted to be the best clinician that I could, and so I want my reputation to be a good reputation. Unfortunately, as I've learned throughout the years, I've seen a lot of my colleagues go down with not so good reputations, and you do not want to be associated in the mental health field with a colleague that does not have a very good reputation, particularly if you are a Black clinician such as myself, or even a provider of color, because there's so few of us to begin with. So there's probably, like, I would say nationally, for myself, there's probably like 3 degrees of separation among clinicians. And so I'm getting a little off topic, but this is just a little disclaimer. There's like 3 degrees of separation between Black clinicians or clinicians of color. So even if I don't know you directly, I guarantee you I probably know someone that's affiliated with you and that could give me the rundown about you. And so that's just how little of us there are, when I started this field. And so it's like, okay, I don't know this person, but let me put my feelers out and see if any of like my colleagues know this person. And there's a good chance. I don't think I've ever had a situation where someone, if I didn't know you, that someone I knew didn't know you. I don't think that's ever happened in my entire life. That's just how small of a network it is, unfortunately. So that can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing if you align yourself with the wrong types of people, in particular the forensic field. So just a little FYI there. But anyhow, I went to did this pre-doc and post-doc with my friend, or who I thought was my friend at the time. And at pre-doc we were great, we were close, we were very supportive. I trusted her clinical opinion, and then she trusted my clinical opinion. It was very collaborative. And then we got to postdoc, and postdoc the way pre-doc was structured and the way postdoc was structured is very different. And I would say in my pre-doc there was an equal amount of women and men, maybe even more women than there were men. But when I got to my postdoc, that was a heavily male-dominated setting. When I worked at the prison, that was heavily male-dominated. So there weren't very many women to begin with, but there were way more men than there were women. And so when we got there, for lack of a better word, this person started to wild out. Like she was just all about men, doing her thing, and like, forget the friendship. Like now she's getting all this attention, and she's not only being disrespectful to me, but she's also disrespecting herself. Because again, the forensic setting is very judgmental, and people talk a lot, right? And so your reputation precedes itself. And if you work in a prison setting, everybody kind of knows women who are weak, because it becomes locker room talk. It becomes fodder among men where like, oh, well, so-and-so did this and so did that. I hate to say it that way, but that's just the way it is. So if you get involved with a man at work, at these types of settings, everybody's gonna know. Everybody's gonna see the pictures. Everybody's gonna, have some opinion, this and that. And that's exactly what it was. And so I had to learn very quickly, like I gotta separate myself from this person. She's being disrespectful. Is showing up at her work where this person isn't doing her work. She's calling out all the time. And then when she's at work, she's sort of playing around with men on the job and not necessarily doing her work. And so that sort of reputation spreads like wildfire. Now, had we not changed environments, there's a good chance. I mean, eventually I probably would have found out how she was, but I never would have seen that radical change of personality. And so, sometimes it just takes a person changing situations or environments or being around different people for that mask to totally slip. And then you're just like, whoa, what the heck? And I wasn't the only person that was like, whoa, what the heck? It was also this person's husband, this person's children. So this wasn't just a strange situation for myself. It was a strange situation for everyone that knew both of us. And it's unfortunate, but I'm glad at the end of the day it happened, because it allowed me to make a difficult but necessary decision. So just a reminder for you guys to keep things like that in mind. Sometimes it's just the situation doesn't present itself fully. Until it does, you may not get to see the other side of that person.